out here and you'll be doing a stable fall face down frog modified. Now out here towards the static legs, it goes like from this to here, see? And then the pilot chute will open and it'll hold the bridle out, and then the main canopy will be open, see, because they're all connected. And then you'll be down here, and you'll be looking up here for the WDI indicator. And you're also going to check for May West. And if that's not there, then you need to check here for 4 panels and a hole. And then when you come down, you're going to find the peak, you're going to land over here, and you're going to get this position, except you don't want to do that because that means you're in trouble. So what you want to do is you want to get right here, and then you're going to come around here, and you're going to fold up, and you're going to go toggle and jettison, and always watch the horizon, okay?
Probably one of the most famous skydiving scenes of any skydiving movie. And I love this. If this is Truman Sparks, the most famous instructor that certainly scared his students. I like to begin with this video because it's really the DNA of our sport. It is really where we come from. And what I want to challenge here is not the culture. The culture of our sport is what we love. But what I want to challenge is our mentality with it. Today, things are so much different than that era. And though it's fun to look back, we have to think differently. And I think we already are, looking at the stage at a Skydiving Association meeting, first class. I'm really proud to see it. So that being said, let's talk about why I think we should have a change in our mentality. First, we need to examine who our customers are. Our customers of today are more different than any customer we've had in the history of the world. How they communicate, you know where I'm going with this, everybody probably has a smartphone, and how we get information today. Because of these main 3 things is why we must change in terms of getting away from maybe some of the lack of professionalism that we see in our sport. Let's look at this young lady here. She is what I would term as a millennial. Millennials today are now in that target demographic for just about every business, the 25 to 34-year-old range. Just by a quick show of hands, how many of you here would qualify as a millennial? Okay, a small percentage here, but more than half. Okay. Let's look at our millennials and why they are so different than any other generation. Millennials were born between the years 1982 and 2000, give or take a couple of years on both ends. Still very young. Largest generation in the world. There are over 80 million, 80 million millennials in America alone. But here's where it gets interesting. The millennial generation is the most educated generation in the history of the world. Incredibly educated. Of course, they're also a little bit cash poor because they've spent a lot of money getting educated. So they're in no rush to get married. Only 26% are married. Of my millennials here, how many of you are married? 1. Okay, so the trend is right. We do find that millennials today tend to live at home with their parents for much longer periods of time, part of because of the economic crunch they're under. Here's also another interesting thing, is millennials are liberal, independent thinkers. Much sharper, probably as a result of having such high educations. They're also digital natives. They're not needing to adapt to the internet age. In other words, email wasn't introduced to them as they were probably for some of us here. I've seen a great video on YouTube, by the way, where there is a baby that literally at about 1.5, 2 years old is using an iPad intuitively. It's swiping, it's minimizing, it's expanding, and then right after that it's handed a magazine. And the baby finds that the magazine is broken. It's a total different shift in generations. 81% are on Facebook. For those that may think that Facebook is dying, it is not. The next generation, though, behind millennials, tend to really be more on Instagram. Facebook bought Instagram for mega amounts of money, as that's the next step. But Facebook still is very relevant today. 55% have taken selfies. Here's where it gets interesting. Only 19% say people or businesses can be trusted. Definitely a little bit leery. And down here, only 78% would spend money on an event over buying something as well. Well, why is this? Firstly, in terms of 19% that trust, millennials have been advertised to constantly since the day they were born. And so they've become almost a little bit cynical about the level of advertising coming towards their way. And as a result, I really preach that the best kind of marketing today is to be authentic in who you are and presenting yourself to millennials. 78% would spend money on an event over buying something. This is where it gets exciting for us, is millennials are experiential. They love experiences. They're not quite a materialistic type generation, and they're willing to spend money that they don't have in order to experience something great. Anybody know what FOMO means? Hashtag FOMO. Yes?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. We had that terrible phrase for a while there, YOLO, you only live once. But that is synonymous with the millennial generation. Is we don't want to miss out on experiences. So starting right away, why we should change our mentality of how we present our sport is our customers are much different in the way that they think today. How many of you have looked at your phones since I started this presentation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it? 6. There we go. Don't be shy. I can almost guarantee you that nearly everybody here will have looked at their phones before this presentation is over. We are addicted to our devices. And that's great news if you want to leverage that, because we know where our customers are. So that's pretty interesting. So let's talk about word-of-mouth marketing. It is the most powerful form of marketing in the world today. Before really 2007 with the introduction of the iPhone, word-of-mouth never had a vehicle to spread. If you had a tremendously great experience somewhere, you might tell 3 of your friends. If you had a terrible experience, you might tell 7 or even 10 of your friends. Now with smartphones, multiply that by thousands. And this is where it gets really real for any business owner. My challenge for everybody here, especially for those entrepreneurs who are thinking about maybe starting a business, I really want you to hear this, because being authentic and figuring out how to make people feel special is going to allow this platform to really work for you. Let's look at some examples, by the way, of how word of mouth can work positively or negatively in your favor. Here's a terrible review for a drop zone. Poor customer service and frightening airplane. Not a review you'd like to see. Rip-off place. If you're looking for some nice skydiving experience and this is the last place you want to go, what a rip-off place this is. Don't do business with these guys. Trumpeting, a lot of bad, negative press. And once it's out there, obviously we know we can't get rid of it. So we got to make a decision in terms of how we run our businesses. Are we going to try and exceed expectations or deliver what it is that we sell? There's got to be something more. Let's have a look at this from my Facebook feed 2 years ago. I just want to give a big thank you to Longhorn Steakhouse in Lakewood, New Jersey. We ate dinner there tonight and it was very busy. I let our waiter know the reason for our visit was to wish my brother off well before he deployed. He's been in the Marine Corps for almost 2 years and recently came home for his pre-deployment leave before heading off to Afghanistan. At the end of our meal, he brought my brother a brownie sundae and a plate that had "thank you" written on it in syrup. It was so nice and thoughtful for them to do that, it brought tears to my eyes. Then at the end of our meal, we received our check and he had comped his meal. Thank you so much, Longhorn, for being such a great business, and thank you so much for helping us wish my brother off well. I do not know this person, Megan Marcillo. We must have a mutual friend. But look at the power of this. So you see a picture of the receipt and the deductions that were made for this Marine that was getting ready to deploy. If you can make out the small numbers there, 317,789 people liked this post. It was shared 20,785 times, and more than 10,000 comments were made. Folks, you cannot buy advertising like this. You could spend all the money on any, and I own a marketing business. Any of the services I offer will never have the value or the power that this can provide. I called the manager at this restaurant, and I said, look, have you seen any uptick in business since this launched? And he said, you would not believe how incredibly busy we've become because of this one Facebook post. It absolutely went viral, which excites me because we can certainly leverage that. So let's look at a couple of companies that are embracing this change. Understand that word-of-mouth marketing is a strategy. It is a strategy. It's not just something that you hope people can talk about. And I'll share with you a company that has embraced this strategy. This from TripAdvisor. My wife and I took the tour when our Royal Caribbean cruise ship docked in Antigua. It had all been done through the cruise ship excursions desk, probably because June is the slow season for the Caribbean. This one was head and shoulders above any of the other tours because the owners really seem to love what they're doing, and it shows. Their staff is great. They under-promise and over-deliver, and the house garden are just phenomenal. Definitely use them. Now, when I share this post, I feel a tremendous sense of pride because the review being made here is about my parents. This ugly fellow here with a mustache is my father. The nice lady who's actually born in Scunthorpe, just up the road, is my mum. I was actually born here in London, or not here, but in England, London, and was raised in the Caribbean. And 15 years ago, my parents started an eco-kayaking tour. And what I would like for you all to understand and just to visualize for a moment is Antigua is incredibly small. It's 12 miles long and 9 miles wide. The longest drive you can have from one end to the other is 45 minutes. The only industry that exists in Antigua is tourism. So when they decided to launch their business 15 years ago, investing their life savings to start this eco-kayaking tour, they had 64 businesses that were all competing for the exact same customer as they would be. How could they possibly think to survive? Imagine opening up a drop zone where the only industry was air sports and all your competitors were maybe 30 competitors within a 12-mile radius. It would be impossible. My parents have grown their business, starting against 64 competitors, and in 15 years have gone from being nobody with no advertising budget to not the #1 tour in Antigua, but regarded as the best tour in the Caribbean. And I say that with no bias. The people are telling the world that that's how they feel. Let me take you, firstly, here's an image of the boat that they started with 15 years ago, 24-foot flat-bottom boat. And here's the tour that we take our guests on. When they arrive, this is my parents' home. This is sort of their dream home they built about 5 or 6 years ago. And this is where they also launched their business. And their guests will arrive here. They can use the toilets before we head down to the boats. They can relax here in the garden. We're not going to rush them. The key is no rush. We then are going to take them down to our dock, which is right in front of the garden, and board one of our 7 boats that we actually have. Picture there are 6. We then transport these guests for 5 minutes, a 5-minute boat ride over to the mangroves, where we will kayak in the most spectacular water you'd ever want to see. You can see here from above, we go through all these bays in very tranquil water, all along. By the way, this photograph was taken just last week. And you can see there all along the coastline are mangroves that we will explore and go into little hidden coves. All of our guides have been trained extensively to understand and know everything eco-based, all the flora and fauna, all the possible animals we can come across. When we get finished with kayaking, we then jump in the boats and go over to this uninhabited island called Bird Island, where we will hike to the top of that hill, swim and snorkel. All of that done in 3 hours. But here's the challenge for my parents, is when you invest money to go to the Caribbean, this is what you expect. This is why you're there. So how does one exceed expectations when expectations are already so high? That's the question I ask myself for the skydiving industry is, people are coming to make a skydive, to get out of their comfort zones, to make something that is totally out of their comfort. So how do we exceed expectations when the expectations are so high? This is how my parents have done it. And this is what anybody always talks about, is when you get finished with the tour is where the small touches really come into play. As soon as you come off the boat, you're greeted by one of our staff members who will offer you a chilled, scented face towel to wipe the salt off of your face. You'll proceed on up the path, where you'll be greeted by my mum, who's going to offer you fresh-baked, homemade banana bread, usually baked that morning, and a glass of rum punch. There, you can proceed down into the garden. You can wash your feet off at the foot station if you wish, or you can relax in one of the chairs throughout the garden, connect to free Wi-Fi, and relax. Most any tour that you go on, usually, once it's over, they want to hurry you up to the bus and get you out of there back to the ship. That's not our intention. If you read our TripAdvisor reviews, I don't know if you can make out that number, but there is 796 reviews. 744 of them are 5-star. And we have a few mixed bag down below. But when you look at this graph, that tells the story. A lot of people question whether you should be worried about review sites or not, because certainly some businesses will pad their reviews by getting their friends to review for you, but you can't get that many friends to review that many times over such a long period of time. It tells the story. My parents have not had to advertise because our guests are doing it for us through the incredibly powerful medium of word-of-mouth marketing, which again is a strategy. Here's something that I would like for anybody who is running a business, who has aspirations to run a business. Here's what I want you to take away from this entire presentation, is if you have a good product or service, figure out how to make people feel special. If you can figure that out, and what I'm presenting here is only common sense, but we get lost in the details of day-to-day business that we forget the big picture. Figure out how to make people feel special, and you will win a competitive advantage. If, for example, in a market, you have 4 drop zones that all open up with the same amount of instructors, same amount of tandem rigs and student rigs, same exact aircraft, same advertising budget, same kind of marketing, I guarantee you the one that will have the competitive advantage will be the one that makes people feel special. You will win out, as word of mouth will spread as it's the most powerful form. Here, my parents, as you can see, are currently ranked #1 out of 87 businesses. Do I speak proudly about them? I learned everything there is to know about business just watching them growing up. They are extraordinary. So here's where we're at. Today, marketing, or it used to be that a company had a marketing department and a customer service department. They're now one and the same. If I have an issue with an airline that I'm flying, I usually take to Twitter and just tweet to usually the airline with my complaint. And I will always get a response in a public forum, usually. I'm not nasty, but that's the way of sort of modern communication. Has anybody heard of this company? Zappos? I'm not surprised that you haven't. In 2012, Zappos sold over $2 billion worth of product. $2 billion. What they are is a company that sells shoes online. No matter the kind of shoe, the style, the width, how large, whatever shoe you want, you can buy at Zappos online. That's how they started. They now sell just about anything you can wear. They nearly went bankrupt on 5 separate occasions. But this gentleman here, Tony Hsieh, dropped out of Harvard to start a company called Link Exchange. Link Exchange was the first company that learned how to advertise on the internet. So for those of you that remember Netscape Navigator, in the early days, we used to have ads on the right side of the screen in search. That was Tony Hsieh's company. Because he figured out how to advertise, they started scaling massively. And they started hiring everybody that they could find who was just literate on a computer, quite literally. And they scaled so big that he started hating the very place that he created. Hated it. So he ended up selling Link Exchange for $256 million to Microsoft. And in the deal, they said, look, we'd like for you to stay. If you stay on for another year, we'll give you $40 million. After 3 months, he defaulted. He hated going to work that much. Extraordinary. So he now became a venture capitalist, funding businesses, and he funded Zappos. Zappos nearly went under 6, 7 different times, and he later became their CEO. He decided that when he started Zappos, that he would create a company that people loved going to. He was all about maintaining a great culture and having great core values. That's Zappos' website there. This is Tony and myself, 15 minutes after a presentation by Tony Robbins, and Tony was just hanging out with him. Now, I traveled to Zappos 3 years ago because in getting ready to launch my business, I was so curious about this company that was growing without doing tons of advertising. Their customers were raving about them. And I had to go see it for myself. And quite honestly, I couldn't afford to go there, but I couldn't afford not to because this company is really what I was basing my marketing message on, and I needed to see if it was legit. So at Zappos, if you buy a pair of shoes, you can get a free refund, up to the point of wearing them for up to 12 months if you're unhappy with it. What they found in the early days is nobody wanted to buy shoes without actually trying them on. So they offered free shipping both ways. This is how they hire. Zappos is so big about their culture because they know that if they hire the best people, only the best people will then give great customer service. I challenge the skydiving industry of how are we hiring our staff? Are we in the skydiving industry or are we in the hospitality industry? Typically, we find that skydiving centers are always short on staff, so they'll hire almost anyone. Are you Vector or Strong rated? Do you have at least 500 jumps? You haven't killed anybody? Welcome aboard. And then we wonder why we have customer service issues or why we get negative reviews. Because what's our value system as drop zone operators? Do our staff even know what we stand for or what we're about? So here at Zappos, when they find a candidate just to answer their phones, they will vet them very closely, and then they'll go into 4 weeks of training. And after the first week of training, they're going to be a little bit concerned because they want to make sure that the person that they have selected to train really wants to be there. But they don't want the person to stay because they need money. So at the end of the first week of training, they're going to offer that individual $2,000 to quit. At the end of the second week, $3,000. They want to make sure that they've got the very best people who want to be there and are not staying there for the wrong reasons. I was given full access at Zappos. I got to go into a call center and listen to live calls calling in. They have 2,000 call center employees. I got hooked up with a guy named Mike in a room with about 200 other call center people. I patched in and I listened to a call come in, a lady called from New Jersey, and she said, "Will you please help me? I bought 2 dresses and neither of them fit. So I sent them back. But I did one stupid thing. Rather than sending each dress back into the box that they came, with its own return authorization number, I put 2 dresses into one box with one return authorization number. And as a result, I've only been refunded for 1 dress. Can you help me?" And this is exactly how the conversation went. "Ma'am, I've just picked up your account on my computer. I see that order. I've just refunded you $63.47. Is there anything else I can do for you?" And that pause is what I heard. She said, "Wow, you guys are amazing." So he hangs up the phone. I said, "Mike, I don't understand this. She could have been wearing the dress that you just refunded her. Any other business says, 'Ma'am, I need to call the warehouse to ensure that they have received that item, or I need to call a manager to find out what I can do.'" Took care of her right away. Now understand that this call center receives thousands upon thousands of phone calls, many similar to this, in a week. Imagine how much they're refunding. I said, "How do you justify that in business? I don't get it." He says, "Here's what we understand, and we have studied so many statistics. We recognize that some people are going to cheat the system, but the majority will not cheat the system. We recognize that if we can take care of the customer better than anybody else, even at a short-term loss, the long-term gain is much greater in profit because we've gained their loyalty, because they know we will take great care of them." He said, "Look around in this room. Everybody here has had a call that's lasted more than 2 hours in length." I said, "Mike, 2 hours? What do people talk about for 2 hours when they're ordering maybe a pair of shoes?" He said, "Look, let me tell you, there's a lot of lonely people out there, and they want to talk to someone. Our policy here at Zappos is we do not end a phone call with our clients. Only the client can end a phone call with us." He said, "In fact, the longest call on record here at Zappos is 9 hours, and it did not result in a sale." I said, "I don't even understand that. Explain that to me." He said, "Here's what nobody gets, but this is what makes our company so amazing, is that we're not a company that sells stuff. We're a customer service company that happens to sell shoes." I'll say that again, because it blew me away. We are a customer service company first that happens to sell shoes. Imagine if we adopted that in all of our businesses. I'm not saying we have to give the house away, but it's a truly remarkable way of thinking. I have a friend, Becky Johns, who works at Chicagoland Skydiving Center in their marketing. She went to a big event in the US called South by Southwest, huge music and digital event, and she walked all over town. And you can literally walk 2 miles in a day there, and she was wearing flip-flops, and her feet were ruined. And she called up Zappos and said, "Look, I need help. Send me a women's pair of running shoes, size 8. I need them here tomorrow." "No problem, Miss Johns. Check with concierge." Next morning, she gets down, she goes to concierge. There, she found 6 pairs of shoes and a handwritten note that said, "Miss Johns, we didn't want you to be forced to buy a pair of shoes that you didn't want based on our style choice for you. Select what you want, send back what you don't want on our dime." Now, we can't possibly do something like that in skydiving. Let me say that every customer service agent or person that answers the phone at Zappos, each of them will write 3 thank you cards personally every day on every shift. They have 3 8-hour shifts all with 2,000 employees. So that means daily 6,000 thank you cards are going out. They have been empowered to give someone who's having a rough day on the other line on the phone a bouquet of flowers or cookies. It is incredible. They don't have to advertise. Their customers are doing it for them. It is the power of word of mouth. Because things can go viral is why I'm saying that we need to maybe change our mentality in terms of how we present ourselves, whether you're a sport jumper or an instructor or a drop zone owner. Because literally every customer that walks into your business is a media house. As long as they have this device, they can tell the world how great or how mediocre you are. If we do not meet expectations, there'll be a negative review. If we meet expectations, then nothing will happen. But if we exceed expectations, you've got loyalty, and you've got somebody now trumpeting on your marketing team for you. Really powerful. Let me go back that one. Call it midnight. If you go into Las Vegas or anywhere in the United States and you don't have cell service, as I don't here in England, and you want to find a place to eat, and you're not sure what's open, call Zappos. They'll tell you where to go, because they're a customer service company first. It was from the model of Antigua Paddles, helping my family, to try and eliminate pain points and exceed expectations that I brought to my experience at Skydive Carolina. When I'd been at the drop zone, when I started there, the operation had already been running for 16 years. And it wasn't as busy as it should have been. And I thought, wow, all of our customers seem very happy. What's the disconnect? Why are we not growing, as I've seen with my family's businesses in the Caribbean? And what I started recognizing is we are getting skewed information. Ask anybody who's just made a skydive, and they're going to tell you they just had the time of their lives. They did. But give them 24 hours to come down from the high and then survey them on every customer point of interaction they have with your business. And you'll find that maybe you're not doing as well as you thought. That was the case for me when we started surveying our guests. All of my questions on my survey were based on every customer point of interaction that I could think of that my customers were having with the drop zone. How my website looked. Today, millennials use social media for search as much as they do, not as much as Google, but they do look at social media to look a little bit more into a company. How we answered the phone even had to become more structured, more polished as a first impression. Often here, Skydive. No, for us it was now going to be, thank you for calling Skydive Carolina. This is James. How may I help you? Our road signage. Let me say something about road signs. Whenever there is a fatality or a serious injury at a drop zone, the first thing the media will do is shoot video of the front road sign. Test me on it. Go look at any negative story about something bad happening in skydiving. You will always see the sign on the front end of the road. If the sign looks really run down, because it's typically an afterthought, it's speaking volumes to the audience watching the piece. Based on the professionalism. It looks typically run down, as a lot do. It leaves a perception that we don't want. Presentation of our car park. Let me say, when our guests arrive at a drop zone, they're nervous. And that first smiling face when they walk into registration or manifest is so important. Kind of training we do. Here's the bugaboo for almost every drop zone I visit everywhere. Wait times from check-in to getting onto an aircraft. Condition of the bathrooms, what percentage of our guests at a drop zone use the toilets? 100%. And I was finding our bathrooms were filthy by 2 o'clock in the afternoon with such heavy use. Gotta fix those small details, because the reality is each individual one of these small details don't really mean much. But when they all add up together collectively, that's the whole experience. Our thing in skydiving is we are so focused on the jump, but not enough on all the points of interaction around it. Snack bar, from going from maybe cheeseburgers to maybe being more sensitive to people that would like to eat more healthy. Presentation of the instructors. I do visit lots of DZs all over the place, and I'm sure we've all seen an instructor that doesn't maybe look the way that you'd want them to in terms of professionalism. Maybe they look like they just got out of bed, or jumpsuits are a bit torn or muddied. Think for a moment, what does it cost to make, let's just say, a tandem skydive? In this country, about 250 pounds. It's a lot of money. If you or I were to spend 250 pounds on anything, we would expect more than our industry often gives. I'm not saying that for everybody, but we all see it. What does it mean to be a professional? particularly charging such premium prices. The condition of the jumpsuits, presentation of the videographer, the plane, even the presentation of the plane, even if the engines are great and it looks really run down, that's something as well. What the ascent rate is, or excuse me, what it's like to be with your instructor on the ascent to altitude. A lot of times we see a lot of sexual innuendo sometimes in our sport. We can't inject ourselves. I'll say, any instructors in this room? Okay? As instructors, you have all experienced this. When you land, the story starts to unfold. I just beat cancer. I just found out I had cancer. I'm going through a divorce. I just lost someone special to me and my family. Don't taint the experience. We never know who's coming to our doors, who's going to be in our care. I often say that being in the skydiving industry, we have the privilege to give somebody a great day. That is such an awesome responsibility. I don't know how many jobs allow for that. So we got to make sure that it's always tip-top, not because of the money, but because we get to, not have to. We get to jump with people and give them an experience that they'll never forget. Carrying on. Free fall, of course, that's what we focus on the most and we're all most good at. The wait time for media, well, that's a killer. Have a great experience in the wait times to get your DVDs and CDs. Often see this at so many drop zones. And we see it all the time and we stop seeing it. £100 usually for a nice DVD and photography package. It should be on properly branded stuff. It should look really strong. And then, of course, the closing. If, and I'll say this, if you are dropping your gear to leave your student and run to meet your next student, we are doing it wrong. Flat out doing it wrong. Only when you start breaking down every point of interaction with whatever business you're running and go, are we delivering 5 stars in each individual touch point? If you can do that, make people feel special, you will win. It's what we did at Skydive Carolina. Our growth rate in 9 years of me being there went 30% higher year after year after year after year with spending less advertising dollars than we ever had done in our history. We went from a weekend-only operation with an airplane, a Twin Otter that was leased, that was never meeting aircraft. Very seldom was it meeting hot. And in that 9-year span, we went from a 6-day-a-week operation running 2 turbines, a King Air and a Grand Caravan, and a Saturday typically sometimes 90 to 100 tandems. And we spent less money on advertising. From a marketing standpoint, we wanted to look $1 million in terms of our web presentation, but we wanted people to feel wowed before they got to the airplane. None of this is rocket science to anybody, but it takes an attention to detail to take your business to another level. My parents, as I talked about earlier, do you know the effort it takes to wash, fold, or roll 180 face towels in a day? Day after day after day. My mom is 65 years old. If they stopped doing those face towels, nobody would know the difference. But if they stopped doing it, people would stop saying or telling the world how attentive we are in terms of making them feel special. Here's a scenario. If I challenged everybody in this room that you were going to go on a date, and I asked you to think about that person that you thought was out of your league, and you get the opportunity to take him or her on a date, but you're in charge of planning it. And finally, the big day comes and you're going to pick up your date. Okay? How do you feel when you're sitting in your car, getting ready to go out and go up to the door? Anybody?
Like $1 million.
Like $1 million. I'll tell you how I'd feel. Super nervous. I'd be flat out scared. Because you want to impress. You're hoping to impress and maybe get a second date. Let me tell you how it would go for me. When I get out of my car, I am now out of my comfort zone, and I am hyper aware. I'm noticing, do I see grass in the cracks of the driveway? What kind of car does she drive? What kind of house does she live in? What does the shrubbery look like? I'm processing information like this, all while I'm walking up to the door with my heart in my throat. Knock on the door, she answers, and I am taking in every single detail in a millisecond of how she's dressed, what kind of shoes she's wearing, the perfume that she's wearing, but I'm also taking in what's behind her. I'm looking at the couch. I'm seeing what's actually on TV that's playing. I'm noticing if the house is untidy, if it's messy, if it's super clean. I'm smelling what's coming from the kitchen. I'm noticing if a cat runs by. I am hyper aware. I see everything in milliseconds. Because we're out of our comfort zones is why our awareness levels are so high. Every student that comes to a drop zone is like that. They arrive and they are aware of everything that's going on at the drop zone. You think when two instructors are talking to each other, these people aren't listening? Intently. They see someone running to the airplane, cinching up on the way, they go, what's going on? Watching intently. We're being watched so closely. So we got to keep that in mind, and people can record. I've got a video that I sometimes play in other presentations of two girls who, on video on YouTube, are so excited about going to the drop zone. And we see videos of them driving, and they're having that, oh, they can't wait. It's so exciting. And then the third video is them sitting on the couch. Here we are. We're waiting. And the vibe is just dead. And no one's communicating to them why there's a delay. And it's a beautiful sunny day, and you can hear the drone of the Twin Otter. Ah, so disappointing. So here's what I want to take to be another takeaway, is you got to be passionate. If you're going to start your own business or run a drop zone or whatever your aspirations are, do what you're passionate about. You got to figure out, first you got to have a great product or service. Figure out how to make people feel special. As I said, pay attention to the details, but none of that matters if you're not passionate. What is it that we are selling? We are selling the single greatest thing there is to do on the planet. There cannot be cynicism in our sport. I see a lot of people get into skydiving because they're passionate about it. And then over years, the passion can start to wane. And my challenge is, if you're a sport jumper and you love skydiving, take some time to chat with students that are just waiting around, particularly on a weather day. Take that time. Share your joy, because they have no idea what's getting ready to come. For instructors, the thing that kills me is to hear the expression, we're hucking meat. Yeah, I'm going to huck meat. Or throwing drogues. Man, again, we have such a privilege to give someone a great day. Great marketing without connection is just like everybody else. But connection combined with great marketing is the most powerful form you can have. We gotta be passionate about what we're doing. Otherwise, what's the point? I'm going to be awkward for a moment. I just want to ask everybody here for a moment, how many, by a show of hands, would like to be part of something excellent? I've never, ever asked that question and had someone not raise their hand. What does it mean to be excellent? In terms of being a skydiving professional, to me, it's like when the hangar doors open in the morning, you're putting on a show. It's a production. And you want to make sure that when you open the hangar doors the next morning that your stage is now clean and spotless for the next new people that get to come and experience this amazing opportunity that we're offering. I want to set up a video here of a gentleman who works as a flight attendant on an airline. And think for a moment about how flight attendants are. It's a really tough job. Okay? That not only do they have to serve their guests, but there also has to be an element of taking care of everyone from safety. Now, what's the first thing you do when you fly? When the safety announcements come over about buckling your seatbelts, it's the first thing we all do. Tune out. We've heard it 1,000 times. We know how to buckle our seatbelts. I can tell you that the flight attendants themselves are tired of giving that safety thing over and over and having everybody ignoring them. So what I want to share with you is this video.
Good evening, folks. Welcome aboard Southwest Airlines Flight 372, service to Oklahoma City. Those of you that have flown us before know that we do things a little bit differently here on Southwest. Some of us tell jokes, some of us sing, some of us just stand there and look beautiful. I, unfortunately, can do none of those. So here's the one thing that I do know how to do. We're going to shake things up a little bit. I need a little audience participation. Otherwise, this is not going to go over well at all. So here's what I need, especially you guys in the front because you know what's coming. All right, I need a beat. All right. All I need you to do is stomp and clap, and I'm going to do the rest because I've had 5 flights today, and I just cannot do the regular boring announcement again. Otherwise, I'm going to put myself to sleep. So, you guys with me? All right. So give me a stomp, clap, clap. Come on, stomp, clap, clap. They don't be there. There you go. Keep that going. This is flight 372 on SWA. The flight team is on board serving you today. Teresa in the middle, David in the back. My name is David, and I'm here to tell you that. Shortly after takeoff, first things first, there's soft drinks and coffee to quench your thirst. But if you want another kind of drink, then just holler. Alcoholic beverages will be $4. If a Monster Energy drink is your plan, that'll be $3, and you get the whole thing. We won't take your cash, you gotta pay with plastic. If you have a coupon, then that's fantastic. We know you're ready to get the new prices. Open up the lid, put away the suitcases. Carry on items, go under the seat. In front of you, so none of you have things by your feet. If you have a seat on a roll with the exit, we're gonna talk to you, so you might as well accept it. You gotta help evacuate in case we need you. If you don't wanna live, we're gonna reseat you. Before we leave, our advice is put away your electronic devices. Fasten your seatbelt, then put your trays up. Press the button to make the seat back raise up. Sit back, relax, have a good time. It's almost time to go, so I'm done with the ride. Thank you for the fact that I wasn't ignored. This is Southwest Airlines. Welcome aboard. Thank you very much for my beat. I appreciate that. You will not get that on United Airlines, I guarantee.
How awesome is that? When I fly Southwest Airlines, I'm looking for this guy. This was his 5th flight of the day. He flies hundreds of times, maybe thousands of flights in a year. And he brings it. Look at the energy that was transformed in that, of all those passengers. Going through the thing, oh boy, gotta get loaded here. Inconvenient. And then he turned that white dude totally gangster by the end of it. Incredible energy. This is what makes businesses different. This went viral. You can't buy advertising like that. Here's my favorite definition of passionate people. Uninspired people rarely do inspired work, but passionate people in an organization are different. They do ordinary things extraordinarily well. I love that. That's the truth. We spend so much of our lives at the drop zones that sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us. We don't empathize with what our guests are feeling as we walk and hoot and holler all around them. But uninspired people don't do inspired work. And the brilliance of business, whether it be my parents or Zappos, is paying attention to those small details. They do ordinary things extraordinarily well. Saying the safety procedures, that was extraordinary. Customers don't have relationships with organizations. I don't care how great your brand or your logo is or your website or if you're on Google AdWords or you work on SEO development. None of that matters. If you want to go viral, if you want to grow your business, passionate employees, whether they are salespeople, technicians, or service reps, constantly show their commitment to customers. They do this by demonstrating their passion about what they do. There isn't a person in this room that's involved in skydiving that hasn't been passionate at some time about this sport. I invite you to share that passion with everybody. This, to me, is the magic in great marketing. This, to me, is what builds a business. Most businesses, when they open, start with spending money on advertising, what I call external marketing. And this is the wrong approach, I think. To me, if you focus on every single customer touch point, figure out how to amaze people, how to figure out to make people feel special, you're going to have customer loyalty. Word of mouth will start to spread. People will recognize that you are different. And only then will I spend more money on advertising. That's where we start complementing the two. But most businesses just go with this plan and just deliver their service or their product just like everybody else. But start there with amazing your customer, gain their loyalty. You will start to grow. And the cycle, as your customer base is increased with the exposure from your marketing, the cycle is beautiful. Thank you very much for your attention this morning. It was an honor for me to present to you. If you'd like to connect with me, here is my information. But I challenge everybody in this room to be passionate, figure out how to make people feel special. It is my goal for my life to inspire others and to be inspired by others. I hope that you all will leave this conference in mind of inspiring the guests that come to your drop zone, regardless of your role. Thank you very much.